It was April 29th, 2007, and they were led astray by a young Iraqi child who turned out to be working with the enemy. They became ambushed. My brother's corpsman was hit. My brother exposed himself to pull his corpsman back to safety. And then another one of his Marines was hit, and Travis ran out again to pull him back to safety. And at that point, the only way for them to push back the enemy was somebody to move into a position that exposed themselves. And that's what Travis did. He moved out from the covered position with his grenade launcher. He was able to push back the enemy. At the same time, he was hit with one bullet. He was given a Silver Star for his actions. The last line of the citation says that, Travis's deliberate actions ultimately saved the lives of every member of his patrol.
Wow.
Travis died doing what he loved, and he truly loved it. That definitely brings me peace.
My name is Derek Wolf. I'm a Super Bowl champion and a 10-year NFL vet. Now, after a decade of professional football, I'm focusing on my other passions. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Wolf Untamed. Today's guest is Ryan Manion. She's a Gold Star sister. She's suffered a lot of loss in her life. She's lost her mother. She's lost her brother. Her brother, Travis Manion, was a combat veteran. He's a Marine. In 2006, he was killed in Iraq. Her family then started a foundation called the Travis Manion Foundation, and they've been extremely successful. They have over 300,000 members. They've helped a ton of veterans. Check this one out. I hope you enjoy it. Are you a Philly fan?
Die hard. Yes.
Okay. So Jason Kelsey was my roommate in college.
No way.
Yeah, we lived together. Me, him, and Travis all lived together in college. Yeah, at Cincinnati.
Oh my God. What? That's wild. Yeah. So Lane Johnson is like a huge ambassador for our organization. And so,
nice.
yeah, so I've gotten to know a lot of the players, and yeah, it's so much fun here when we're winning, and it's terrible when we're not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, that's any sports town, right? I mean, it's the same thing here in Denver. When we were winning Super Bowls, it was awesome, and then like we had like an 8-year period where we sucked. It was awful. It was awful here. And we finally made it back to the playoffs this year and then got smoked by Buffalo. But you guys I think you guys have a real shot of winning a Super Bowl this year. So
Listen, I'm staring at my, my framed copy of the Philadelphia Inquirer with, Nick Foles on the cover of the paper. The headline is "At Last," and I mean, it was like the most fun period of ever living in Philadelphia was when we won the Super Bowl last.
2018. It's funny because we actually came there to play you guys that year, and that's the best team I ever played against.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
they were so good. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, these guys are just like, we didn't have an answer for anything. And we had like a top 3 defense, and we just couldn't stop anything that you guys were doing. So
like, even just watching them the other night, like our defense is so good right now.
Oh yeah. The guys you guys have up front, and they're all really young too. They're so good. It's unbelievable. It's good. They're going to be good for a long time too.
Yeah. So, it's super fun to watch. So,
but that's what good ownership and good management and then good coaching, that's what you get, when you have those 3 things, you're going to have a good football team for years to come. You might have like a down year here and there, but for the most part, it's just like any business. It starts at the top, right? And shit rolls downhill.
I mean, that's kind of how it's been since 2018. Like we haven't made it back there again, but like the team's good. And one of my best friends is Patrick Mahomes' videographer. And so, it is just constant, the back and forth text messaging and like, and I don't know, I'm looking at it. I'm like, that might be the matchup this year, So
I think so. Well, we'll see. Buffalo looks good. Buffalo.
Yeah.
I think a Buffalo Eagles Super Bowl would be a really good game. And that's something I'd like to see.
Well, the cool thing about Buffalo, is that Sean McDermott?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he is from Philly. He went to the same high school as my brother. So I'm always like, I've got a soft spot for the Bills because of him, but not if they're playing the Eagles. So.
Yeah. And everybody, it's Philly versus everybody, right?
Exactly.
Well, I'm glad you brought up your brother because, that's really going to be the main focus of this. But let's talk about you first.
Sure.
Because, I've been reading articles and, doing a little bit of backstory research on you. in your foundation that you guys have created? Because your family created the foundation, right? It was like a family thing, or was that just you solely that created that?
No, it was really my mom. And yeah, it was a family endeavor after my brother was killed. My mom started the foundation, and really, like, I always say, my dad and I really saw it as like a small memorial fund operating in the local Philadelphia area. But more importantly, it was like a way for a mother to channel the grieving and loss of her only son. And so never could have predicted that, 17 years later, we'd be one of the largest veteran service organizations in the country. But here we are.
Yeah, you guys are. I mean, the fact I was reading the article about where he had a naval ship named after him and everything. So I want to stay on track and get to that. But let's start from the beginning. So where did you guys grow up?
So we grew up a little bit of everywhere. My dad's a retired colonel in the Marine Corps. So
Okay.
I was born in Camp Lejeune on base. And, the first 11 years of my life, I moved 13 times. Um, my parents both grew up in Philadelphia. And so when my dad left active duty, we ended up back here. I went to high school here. So, like, Philly is my hometown. That's where, my family roots are. But we lived a little bit of everywhere, East Coast, West Coast, everywhere in between. And I often say that, like, it was challenging. I have the softest spot for military children as a result of being one myself and knowing, kind of what you have to overcome. Like, you could be somewhere for less than a year and a half, and it's like, oh, now you're going here. And that's tough for a kid.
Oh yeah.
But looking back on it now, gosh, I feel like it built so much inside of me to be like resilient and overcome adversity. Just um, having to be so nimble and moving around as a kid, like, it teaches you a lot of things that you certainly don't realize at the time. But when you get older, you're like, ah, that was probably a good thing.
Yeah, I moved around a lot as a kid too. I wasn't a military kid, but we moved a lot. I went to a lot of different elementary schools, and it's tough because making friends is hard, because like if you as a kid you just want to you have your friend group and hang out with your friends and stuff, and it's like every time you move to another school you got to make a whole new friend group, and that's just like how little kids are mean, so
Yeah,
it's like
totally,
you know
totally.
that's why sports were so great because I would just I have an automatic friend group when you play sports.
Well, and that was it for, like, that was one of the big things that my parents really instilled in us. It was like, no matter where we went, it was enrolling us in sports right away. And my brother and I were just 15 months apart. So a lot of times, like, back in the early 80s, I was on the same, like, T-ball team as my brother and the same
Hmm.
soccer team because there weren't enough, young girls that were playing at that age. And so that was like a huge part of my development was playing sports. And
Yeah.
no matter where we went, probably before we were even enrolled in school, my parents were looking up, like, what the intramural leagues were around there and where they could get us signed up for sports.
Which sports did you guys what was like your favorite sport?
So we played everything, literally everything, but I ended up playing lacrosse in college. And my brother in high school, I played field hockey and lacrosse, and then went on to play lacrosse in college. In high school, my brother um, played football, lacrosse, and wrestling, but then he went on to wrestle in college. He could have done any one of them. He went to the Naval Academy.
Okay. And where did you
Yeah.
go?
I went to Widener University,
Okay.
right in Philadelphia.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that sports is such a good foundation as far as like team building, right? Because it teaches you how to play as a team.
totally.
I wrestled and played football both, so it was, wrestling was a little bit different because it's just you out there. But that's why I loved football so much because of the team aspect of it, and so I think that really carries you through life. Anybody you always see these people that are like really great team members in business, and it's because they played sports and that taught them how to be a good teammate, and that's just like leadership. Everything comes from that. Do you think that helped you like in life, just like playing sports? How important do you think that was for you?
Oh, I mean, I think it probably was the single-handed reason I went to college, and graduated from college, was because I was playing a sport. I think it's the reason I kept good enough grades to get into college in high school.
Hmm.
Um, I was a bit of a wild child. My brother was like super disciplined. And so he always kind of had the eye on the prize. He was, all state in football and lacrosse, all American wrestler. So, but he worked so hard at it. But yeah, it was like, for me, there was that level of like discipline that even as someone who kind of teetered on the side of like kind of wanting to do the more fun thing, the more social thing, there was always that aspect of like you've got to do this in order to achieve these goals. And it's the reason that I'm so heavily focused with my kids on making sure they're playing sports. Like, you know, 99% of it is about what they learn in terms of accomplishing something with a team. And they're not going to get that anywhere else when they're growing up. And
Right.
so that's like the biggest part of it for me is like the leadership opportunities and that sort of thing is like what I'm so focused on with my children. Playing sports is so great to learn about competition and competitiveness and actually achieving something. I've got my oldest daughter is a freshman. She was recruited to the Naval Academy for lacrosse. So I'm getting to watch my first one on the in the Division 1 level, and it's like it's just so fun. And there's nothing I love more than watching my kids on a sports field or on a basketball court. And in fact, my favorite sport to watch is CYO basketball. Like my 10-year-old son playing basketball with a bunch of fourth graders. Like there's nothing more exciting than watching these kids like duke it out on the court. It's just like it's the best.
Oh yeah. Have you coached your kids at all?
I have. So my oldest daughter, I coached her in lacrosse when she was young. I coached like the intramural teams here.
Hmm.
So from like kindergarten to 6th grade. And then I let people much more equipped to coach her take the reign from there. But yeah, I nothing I love more than working with young kids.
Yeah, and then I think it's also that's the cutoff age from when your kids stop listening to you.
Totally.
You know?
And it's the cutoff age too, where I think you start to realize, like, okay, if we recognize like very early on that my oldest daughter was very talented and like she had very naturally gifted athletic ability. And so you have to make that decision point to be like, all right, let's let the professionals take it from here so they can actually harness all of that for her.
Yeah, that all that potential needs to be put somewhere, right? You need
Yeah,
to focus on the
exactly.
things that actually matter. But so what did you when you went what did you study in school? So you leave, you go to college, you're playing lacrosse. What are you studying? Like what do you see your future like? Because that everybody's got like a plan. And you kind of, right? Like I didn't for me it was like I'm going to the NFL or I was going to drop out. If I didn't make it to the NFL, I was just going to go to the Navy SEALs. Like that was my plan. So it was, I just never saw myself working in like the regular workforce, but what was your plan?
So I majored in English. My plan was originally I was going to be a teacher. The problem with getting a teaching degree is that you don't get up into the student teaching until like your senior year, right? So I get to my senior year, I student teach first semester, and I'm like, I don't really know if I this is what I want to do. And that was like a uh-oh moment for me. And
Hmm.
I ended up deciding that I wanted to start my own business because again, I just couldn't see myself like I was pretty limited with an English degree. I'm like, what do I do here? And so I decided to open a clothing boutique. And I had taken out small business loans before I even graduated. And just, I graduated in June. By August, I was opening my first store down at the Jersey Shore. And right away, it was like very successful. And I'm like, okay. And like, I thought that I had found it. I was like, this is it. I'm going to run this clothing boutique. I'm going to open up more locations. And I felt like I had found the path of what my life was going to look like going forward. And I loved it too. I really loved it.
So what happened with that though? Why didn't
Well,
you keep doing that? Was it not scalable or what? I mean, what
it was
happened?
scalable. What happened with that was it was actually the day of I came up to Philadelphia, so I had my Jersey Shore store, and I had put all the pieces together and decided to open up a second location right down the street from my parents' home, right outside of Philadelphia. And I came up to sign the lease, look at the building. I was dropped my 10-month-old daughter off at my parents' house. They were having friends over for a barbecue and some of our family. I said, I'm going to go into town real quick and sign the lease on my second store. And I was standing there with the landlord, paper in hand. My phone rang. It was my mom. I didn't answer it. She called again immediately. And I was like, all right, something's going on. She's calling me again. I answered the phone, and I just heard screaming on the other end. And I couldn't make out what had happened. It was just screaming. My initial reaction was like my daughter fell or was choking on something, that I couldn't think of anything else. And drove back a mile to my parents' home, and standing in the driveway was my dad, along with one of my dad's good friends, a retired colonel in the Marine Corps, and which struck me as odd. And I got out of the car, looked at my dad, and I said, "Where's Maggie?" Wondering like, "Where's my daughter? Is she okay?" And my dad just looked at me and said, "Travis was killed." And that was like the moment that changed everything for us as a family. Um, so needless to say, these clothing boutiques, which had brought me so much passion and like I loved, and actually one of the last conversations I had with my brother in Iraq was him sharing with, like, he was like, oh, because I carried men's stuff too, and I was telling him about a brand I got in. He's like, hey, put a couple aside for me, and I'm like, you got it, and um it was a few months after I had signed the lease. I had the store. I opened up my second location, and it was a couple months after he died. I remember I had gotten in a brand of designer jeans that like took me 2 years to acquire, and pre Travis's death, it would have been like a momentous event for me as a business owner. And I opened the box and I was pulling them out, and I just felt empty. And I'm like, I can't do this. Like, this can't be what my life looks like now. Like, it brings me
Yeah.
no purpose. And so I sold the stores, and I went and worked for the government, which is like so weird. But I was like, I need to give back. I need to serve. I need to do something. And so in my mind, I thought, I'm going to go work for the government. And I recognized, like, the day I walked in, I was like, what the heck was I thinking? Like, that was a terrible idea. But I worked there for about a year. And during that time, my mom
What were you doing? What were you doing though? What were you doing for the
I
government?
worked for HUD, Housing and Urban Development. Again, it was like just kind of where I could get into. Um, and it was about a year after I had been working there that the foundation started to like creep up, where I was like, mom's doing a little bit more here. She had hired like 3 or 4 people, and she actually was like, I'm gonna hire an executive director. And so I was joked that like I sent my resume in to careers at Travis Manion. And I didn't say like, Mom, I want to come work with you. I like actually just sent my resume in. And clearly there was no nepotism involved, but she hired me. And then I started working at the foundation, and I've been there ever since 2010. So yeah, like 14 almost 15 years.
Hey guys, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite sponsors, Juniper Mountain Coffee. Coffee without compromise. You're getting high quality coffee without the high prices. This is an American company that stands behind their values. They stand behind their coffee. These guys make some of the best coffee I've ever had. It's a coffee I drink every morning. Juniper Mountain Coffee works directly with the farmers, paying fair wages, and that way you have no middleman. There's no BS, no garbage. You're getting high quality products. So go check them out at junipermountaincoffee.com. So let's talk about your brother then. So was your brother always like determined to serve? Was that something that like something that he talked about? Because your dad served, and was it like kind of, did your grandpa serve? Like, is it like a family thing?
I mean, certainly like my grandfather was with the Army Air Corps, flew during World War One, and my dad served, all my uncles served. Like there's a lot of military service in my family. The one thing that my dad didn't do was really try to force us to join the military, right? Like he didn't, it wasn't something where he was like, or even persuade us. It was, we obviously knew what military service was, we understood it, but it wasn't something that he was kind of like, hey, this is the path you should take. Travis didn't really talk about joining the military too much. In fact, it's funny up here, I have because somebody had asked me, like, did you always know your brother wanted to be in the Marines? And I'm like, no, never. Like he never talked about it. But I have a little picture up here and it's of Travis and it's from like 5th grade and it's what do you want to be? And he wrote, I want to be a Marine Corps pilot. So he definitely had that, he was thinking it. But he went to the Naval Academy, commissioned out of the Naval Academy into the Marines, which it was not surprising that he chose Marines over Navy, commissioning out of the Marine Corps or out of the Naval Academy. And he, he entered into the Naval Academy pre 2001.
Yeah.
My dad's almost entire military service was during a peaceful time in our nation's history. So while I say that our family certainly knew about service growing up as a military child, like we didn't, I think my dad got as far as like, Kuwait during the first Gulf War. And then like, then the war was over. Like it was that quick, right? And
Yeah.
so we didn't understand certainly what that the world was going to look so drastically different. And the world changed while he was in college, so he entered in like the most peaceful time in our nation's history. September 11th happens, and literally before he had even graduated, he had friends that were a year above him in school that had already been killed in Iraq. And
Yeah.
so it was, and we knew that, as soon as he graduated, it was down to Quantico, go through the training, and you're off. And like he graduated in 2004, he was already in Iraq in early 2005. Less than a year after he graduated for his first deployment. So
So it happened fast.
it happened fast. Yeah. And it
And
was,
I bet that's like, I can't imagine the anxiety that goes on, when a close family member of yours has to go to war. Like it's a
yeah.
real war.
Yeah, and for us, like I remember, so Travis went over on his first deployment as a logistician. That was
What is
the
that?
MO. So it's a logistics officer essentially,
Okay.
like, re-upping supplies. So that was the MOS he was given. And it's not what he asked for. He asked for infantry. But sometimes, the Marine Corps tells you this is what you're doing. And his friends always said when he got logistics, he was like, well, I'm going to be the best damn logistics officer there ever was. But he went over to that first deployment, and I remember he would call me, and it was super easy to get a hold of him. Like if I emailed him, I'd be like, hey, call me today. And he'd call me because he was like largely behind the wire on that deployment. Um, and he would like talk to me, and there were a few times where he was like, I'm bored. And nothing sounded sweeter to my ears than him telling me he was bored. Cause I was
Yeah.
like, great, be bored. For him, that wasn't what he wanted to be. So when he came back, he ended up joining the 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, and became a recon Marine. And it's what he wanted to do. But we knew that being a recon Marine, the job was going to be much different. And it certainly was. His second deployment over there, he was part of a MIT team, which was a group of 12 Marines that was embedded with the Iraqi army to train them. And communications were limited at best when, because he was like living in I don't even know where he was living, but
Living in a mud hut, probably.
yeah, there was no address to send him stuff to, let me put
Right.
it that way. And so, so there was a lot of there was a lot of anxiety during that second deployment because we knew just how dangerous it was. Just a couple weeks before he was killed, his unit was involved in a chemical attack, and we kind of got whispers down the lane that this was bad. There was a bunch of guys taken out, and a couple things that like were alluded to us that Travis did some pretty heroic things that day, but we didn't really know what it was. He ended up getting a Bronze Star with Valor for that chemical attack that day. And then it was 2 weeks later when he was killed. And so, the we were on high alert from the point of learning of that chemical attack. We knew that there was a lot going on.
So can you talk more about, the mission, what was going on, how he got killed? How,
Sure.
can you do, because I'm sure you've heard all the stories. You've probably talked to a lot of people on his team and
Yeah.
can you talk about that?
Yeah, so it was April 29th, 2007. They were on a patrol that day. Um, they were on a patrol, and they were unfortunately led astray by a young Iraqi child who turned out to be working with the enemy. They became ambushed, and there was a sniper on top of a roof that was, basically the kid's job was to get them to this position where the sniper could start firing. And that's literally just what happened. My brother's corpsman was hit. And my brother exposed himself to pull his corpsman back to safety. And then another one of his Marines was hit. And Travis ran out again to pull him back to safety. And at that point, they were kind of covered on three sides. And really, like, the only way for them to push back the enemy was somebody to move into a position that was expose themselves. And that's what Travis did. He moved out from the covered position with his grenade launcher. He was able to push back the enemy, but at the same time, he was hit. He was hit with one bullet. It entered in the side of his chest plate. And he was the only member of his patrol that was killed that day. He was given a Silver Star for his actions. And, the citation, the last line of the citation for his Silver Star says that, Travis's deliberate actions ultimately saved the lives of every member of his patrol. And
Wow.
yeah, and just when I read that line, it's like that's who Travis was, and one of his Marines that he served with said, I had a conversation with Travis and I said, you don't always have to be the first one in the building. And he said, and I knew when I told him that it really didn't matter because he was going to be the first one in the building. And, it was what he demonstrated on that last day. And, for me, I think about, losing my brother and my best friend is the worst thing that ever could have happened to me. But I also think that Travis died doing what he loved, and he truly loved it. And,
Yeah.
that definitely brings me peace.
Yeah. That's, because it's not a pointless death.
Yeah.
He died saving his teammates,
Yeah. And I
and
mean,
that's,
I was just with the Marine that he pulled to safety who spent 6 months at Walter Reed recovering from his gun wounds and had a long road to overcome. I was just with him drinking a beer on Friday night. And so, when I'm around guys that he served with, and most especially, the guy that he saved, it's super special.
well, do those guys have a lot of like survivor remorse that they deal with?
Um, he does a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
He struggled for a while. And we've talked pretty openly about it. But one of the things I did is I made him a part of like our community at the Travis Manion Foundation. And I'm like, hey, like
Give them
get
purpose.
involved. Yeah. Like you can't just sit and, chase your sorrows in a bottle. Like you got to do something. And, and frankly, like you have to live a life worthy of Travis's sacrifice,
Yeah.
So, and he does that now in such a big way, and it's so rewarding to see.
Well, that's so great that your family is giving that opportunity to people to do, because guys they really are lost after they leave,
Yeah.
and they come out, they don't have a purpose. They don't really know what they're going to do. So the fact that you're giving them something to do and where he can honor his fallen brother, that's just incredible. All right, guys, I want to talk to you about a product that I've been using for a long time, over a decade. When I was playing football, one of my main staples in my diet was bison. I got my bison from Great Range Premium Bison. They make some of the finest cuts of bison you can get. These guys have ribeyes, ground bison, all the steaks that you want. My favorite part about Great Range is that you don't have to worry about antibiotics or growth hormones in their meats. Great Range Premium Bison is a family-owned company providing bison meat from family-owned ranches around the country. So please go check out greatrangebison.com. So you put your resume in, your mom hires you. What do you start doing with the foundation? What was like your role right away?
So I was hired as the executive director, but I say that I was like Janet Manion's like apprentice because she really was running the show, but I was following her lead. And so I worked alongside her. We were building innovative programs at that time. And really what we were looking to do was identify where the gaps were. And one of the biggest things that we found was that there was so much emphasis put on how you deal with the mental health epidemic that is afflicting our veterans, the suicide epidemic, but all of the attention was put on like where how you help them when they're in a state of crisis. And nobody was talking about how to prevent them from being in that state of crisis. And so we started to really take a super holistic approach to how you catch veterans before it becomes like catastrophic.
Yeah.
That is really the backdrop of everything we do at the organization. It's like we are built on this community of like-minded individuals and offering them that opportunity to serve again. And it's literally as simple as that. Like, hey, you took off the uniform, but we still need you to serve. And these are the things that we need you to do. And that in itself, like, if you track the mental health scores of veterans that are involved in our program against a veteran that isn't, it's night and day. And so, like, the proof is in the pudding right there that, like, we have to catch them before they're in that state of crisis.
Yeah.
And so that's the work we do.
And when you say you're taking a holistic approach, what kind of are you going through treatments? Are you going through? So just explain to me what the Travis Manion Foundation, what you, like start to finish with a guy. So a guy gets into your program. What does it look
Sure.
like for him?
So it looks like what they want it to look like because there's a lot of different roads you can take within our organization. So our flagship program at the organization is called Character Does Matter. So we actually train veterans to mentor youth. And that seems to be where veterans find the most benefit from a mental health perspective because, we're calling on them to help instill leadership and service and all of these values in the next generation. And, you walk away from being around a group of kids and talking to them about your service and what it means to live a servant live a servant lifestyle and the healing properties that has for the veterans is huge. So we have over 3,000 veterans that have gone through Character Does Matter training. So they are actually like fully certified to go out and deliver this content to kids. And we delivered the program to close to 1 million youth across the country. We also have really integrative programs that work on transition. We have a 8-month experiential program for veterans to help them develop their leadership, both personally and professionally. We have a ton of different athletic events. So we have veterans that are just like, I want to be with you just to participate in all of the different athletic events that you offer. Because what comes with that is that group camaraderie of being around other veterans that are doing the same thing. So it's not just the act of, running a marathon or doing a WOD. It's this act of like, I'm showing up And I know that there's going to be other people like me there. And then we run several scale service campaigns throughout the year as well. We operate over 40 different chapters, veteran led chapters across the country. And the things that they're going out and doing are infinite. The amount of impact they're having on the communities in which they live. And that's kind of the science behind it. Like, you've taken off your uniform, you served our country. Now go back and serve your local community and showcase to your local community how much of a civic asset you are.
That's awesome. That's incredible. And giving people purpose, you're giving these guys absolute purpose. And I think that's, as a retired athlete, that was like, that's the hard part of giving up what you've done forever.
Totally.
And it's the camaraderie that you miss, and you miss the purpose, and you miss the grind, you miss all that stuff, so when you're giving them that camaraderie in the sports, you're giving them the leadership capabilities, you're giving them that regiment, and then you're giving them finally purpose and the service, the servitude to like your community and stuff like that, where you have these, especially with kids, you have young kids that are kind of relying on you to be there and show up. So you can't be drunk, and you can't be, you can't drink a bottle of liquor and then go show up and do that. It's not going to work out great for you. So,
Yeah.
you're giving them, something that nothing else really can. There's not a lot of things that can give you that, when it comes to just a 9 to 5 job. You're not going to get that.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot. I've actually had that conversation with Lane about this idea, like the transition, especially within like professional sports, the transition that you guys play, and that service member plays. There is so many similarities.
Oh yeah.
There is a loss of sense of self, right? Like, you think about it, you go from college to your entire professional adult life is, either in uniform or on a field, right? And then that's all stripped away from you. And you're just this naked person with no community around you. Like, and it's super isolating. You have no, like you said, you have no camaraderie, no community. And so there are so many similarities between professional athletes retiring and the transition that service members go through when they take off the uniform.
Oh yeah. I love being around veterans just because it's the same, because you know how vulgar we can be with each other. It's just nice to be around guys that you can talk like that with, and they just like, they're not like, there's not like a shock factor to it. You
Totally.
just say whatever you want. And, I hang out with a ton of veterans. A lot of SF guys are really good friends of mine just because they get it. When you perform or do anything at a high level, and then it's gone, and then you're like, oh, the brotherhood's gone, all this, and, just like we said, it's really difficult to transition straight into society. So what I do is I do a lot of hunting, because you're getting the camaraderie in camp. You're getting like, there's like a sense of there's a goal
Yeah.
that you're trying to accomplish, and you might not get it. There's a lot of failure that comes with it. So, you're not always successful, but you're with a group of guys and you're all grinding it out, and I bow hunt too, so it's a little bit harder. Even just the success rate is super low, but I've noticed that veterans that transition into like something like that, it really helps them get kind of just kick that that monkey off their shoulder, just to get them out doing something. Just go do something that helps you hyper focus on something, and then that can like kind of lead you into something next. This is great. Do you guys have like a website that guys can sign up? Like, how do guys find you?
Yeah, I mean, you can go right on our website, travismanion.org, and just join our mission. There literally is a button that says join our mission. So if you're a veteran, and I also should preface this, is like, our community is not reserved just to veterans. Like, if you said, hey, I'm interested, you could join our mission tomorrow too. And, and that's the beauty of it, that we want what we call inspired civilians to be a part of our community as well. But for, veterans, they can, and anyone can join our mission. As soon as you click that button, fill out a few tabs, you're going to get connected to the most local chapter near you. And then you'll start learning about events that are taking place close to where you are. You'll learn about our national events, and And that's really the most basic way that people get involved. Of course, it's a ton of word of mouth because veterans find themselves referring other veterans to programs and organizations that actually work. And so, that's a lot of the way that we build our network of individuals.
This is really I think there's a way for us to work together. If you have any guys that are interested in getting into hunting or anything like that, but so Bo Nickel and you know who Bo Nickel is? He's a
I literally had Bo Nickel on my podcast yesterday. I know Bo well.
awesome. So
Yeah.
Bo and I, we own an outfitting company together now.
No
And
way.
and his uncle runs it. It's out here on the Western Slopes. And so that's like, we don't want to just like be an outfit for just like, rich guys that want to spend a bunch of money. We want to give back to veterans in a way to where we could take them on hunts that they normally wouldn't get to go on. Like come out here on a Western elk hunt, and get them a tag and make it so it's like something they can really get into, and they get that camaraderie of like hanging out with us, and it's just normal, just a bunch of dudes having fun. So if there's any guys since Bo, I mean, it's great because we can work together. I think that's something we could really work together on.
Yes, Bo's super familiar with our organization. He's been to our black tie gala. He came a couple years ago, and yeah, I mean, I think the hunting aspect is a super cool kind of like niche way. And all the things you say about the what hunting brings. And so yeah, let's definitely talk offline. I'd love to see how we could do something.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. There's just a lot of guys that they want to do it, but they don't know how to get into. You know what I mean? It's just, what are you going to just call some random outfit and you're going to get
Yeah.
taken advantage of usually. So it's just, I would love to get involved there. Hey everybody, this episode is brought to you by Black Buffalo. Black Buffalo's nicotine pouches do not contain tobacco leaf or stem. What they do contain is a ton of flavor, and they're packed with pharmaceutical grade nicotine. The magic of Black Buffalo is they discovered a way to make cured edible green leaves behave like the texture of tobacco. And they add food grade ingredients for industry classic flavors. You're in good company if you roam with the Black Buffalo herd. The business was built by dippers with decades of smokeless tobacco use. They manufacture their tobacco alternatives with respect for those products that came before them. Bold flavors, full pouches, metal lids, and a brand that stands for something: American. Their products are also proudly endorsed by brand ambassadors such as MMA Hall of Famer Cowboy Cerrone, NASCAR champion Brian Blaney, rising country star Larry Fleet, and Rob O'Neill, former U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6. So if you're 21 and older and you consume nicotine or tobacco and you want to join the Black Buffalo herd, head over to blackbuffalo.com to learn more. You can order nicotine pouches online, and they ship directly to most states. Or you can check out their store locator to purchase pouches at thousands of retail locations around the country. Black Buffalo, an American brand, pouches worth respect. You've dealt with a ton of loss in your life, people very close to you. So can we talk about your mother?
Sure. So like I said, I joined the foundation, and I hadn't been there for very long. Just a few months when my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and given less than a year to live. And, she ended up passing about 8 months after her diagnosis. And so I became took over as the president of the organization, which was like tremendously tough, because I felt this big weight on my shoulders to continue this organization that my mom had built. And when she passed in 2012, we had grown quite large. And so it was like, all right, you can't let this fail. Not only can you let this organization that your mom built fail, but this organization's in your brother's name. I took over the organization, and, outside of losing my mom, I've lost a lot of my brother's friends, and that's been really tough too. And
To
so
suicide? Was it suicide and stuff like that, or?
none to suicide. My brother's best friend, his roommate at the Naval Academy, he was a Navy SEAL. He was killed 3 years after Travis in Afghanistan.
Oh,
And his name was Brendan Looney. Travis and Brendan are buried next to each other in Arlington. And Brendan's widow Amy is now serves alongside me at the foundation. So the two of us run it together, and then we go down to Arlington and visit our boys next to each other. We say we have we're the only one with double real estate down there, so we can really spread out when we're down there and hanging out with them. But yeah, for me, I I've had to deal with loss for sure, but it's always been about how I move forward and like I said, like live lives worthy of their loss. And that's been really what's gotten me through.
what does it look like now that you're running? When you start running the show, what is that? You talk about like responsibility, right? I mean, you went from selling clothes and running your own business to now running a foundation that is actually like one of the biggest foundations as far as veteran service goes in the country.
I went from a at the time I thought I was big time, I had 4 employees, ran
Yeah,
clothing boutiques and now it's a $20 million organization with 85 people, 7 offices and 40 different chapters. And I always tell people that I did what any smart CEO leader that doesn't necessarily have all the pieces put together. I went out and I hired the smartest people I could find. Because if you don't have a great team underneath you, it doesn't matter how good you are, your organization will fail. And I have the most incredible team of retired service members and inspired civilians and Gold Star families that work for us. And it is so incredibly rewarding to work alongside them every day.
that's incredible. I mean, I bet it's you just never probably you probably never saw yourself in this position. So, what is like in your mind, like what is the greatest accomplishment? Like where do you see this in, 10 years from now? Like where do you see the foundation going? What is like the because as the great part about owning your own company and running a business and all that stuff is you have goals that you set, right? So is it the same way with the foundation? Do you just run it like a business or do you
Well, I mean, it's certainly a business, 100%.
Mhm.
Anybody that tells you otherwise, running a nonprofit is just like running a business, except you have more rules from the feds. Like you have
Yeah,
more oversight, and they make it harder. But for me, my long-term goal for the foundation is that it's here when I'm not. And so I'm really focused on the sustainability because what started off as like a family affair and what started off as a way for us to honor Travis's legacy has become so much more. And I don't want to see that go away when we're no longer here. So it's about making sure that we build an organization that is set up and ready for the future, where hopefully one of my kids are taking over. My little 10-year-old Travis is one day taking it over, and that it's here for generations to come to support our service members. Because the big thing that's super important is that where we are right now, we're in a place that we are no longer a nation at war. And so what comes with that is a lot of forgotten about the men and women that serve.
for
People
20
don't understand.
years. 20
Yeah,
years there's 20
yeah,
years of war.
20 years of war. And certainly we don't want to be at war. But we also don't want to forget the fact that there are thousands and thousands of men and women that are deployed around the world. That there are service members in droves that are getting out of the military every day and that need our support. And that every day there are so many men and women that are raising their right hand to serve. And regardless of where we are at war, not at war, we need to make sure we're taking care of them. And the government can only and should only, I should say, do so much. And so there has to be organizations like ours that can be there to fill those gaps and to provide the services and the benefits that these men and women so rightfully deserve.
Yeah, and I've heard some stories about some of these organizations that are just in it for the money grab. and they're not
Totally.
in it for the right reasons. So, what can you explain what that's is it difficult to stay like on the line there because you still have to be profitable, to keep the doors open, to keep the lights on, right? Like to keep the all of the because I
Yeah.
don't know what are your operating costs per year, do you think?
Probably about 15 million. Yeah, roughly. And, um, post 9/11, right after September 11th, there were so many veteran service organizations that popped up. It was super opportunistic. People saw money signs, like all you had to say is I'm helping veterans and you were going to make money. And
Yeah.
so it was kind of gross what was happening. I think that has largely slimmed out, and every day it's, those numbers are continuing to die down. And really what's happened now that there's probably 10, 20 groups that are kind of have set themselves apart from the rest of the country. You've still got Wounded Warrior Project at the top, and despite a lot of the challenges they've dealt with, they're a good organization that does a lot of good. You have us, you have Tunnels to Tower, you have the Gary Sinise Foundation. And so there's kind of this collective group, and we're all working together, and we all have different ways in which we serve our veteran community, which has been kind of cool because we all work together in tandem to say, like, hey, we may not be the right fit for you for this, but we're going to refer you to our partners here. And
Yeah.
so it's a good place within the VSO space right now, because, you know, a lot of those groups have just fallen off because people started to get a little more savvy and be like, wait, where is my money going?
Yeah. And then you see the CEO of the companies, flying private everywhere and you're like,
Yeah, that's
this
not
doesn't
adding up.
seem this doesn't seem right. Then you can't afford flights for the guys to get them play. It's just
Right.
I had a guy named Donnie Edwards on with the Best Defense Foundation. And they fly people all the way over to France for the D-Day thing. Like it's just incredible what he's been able to do. He was an NFL veteran, so he like really, it's just like a perfect transition for him.
They do. I know Jack Carr
Yeah.
does a lot with them. He's gone over, and I see a lot about them. Yeah, that's such a cool organization. And gosh, and when you talk about the lack of resources and support, you're talking about these. I mean, men from Korea and World War II. I mean, anything we can do for them is like imperative.
Because I was thinking about how Delta like hooked it up for those guys to fly all those veterans over. Because like some of these guys are like they're like 100 years old now. So it's like a real process to get them from point A to point B.
I didn't know that is that Donnie Edwards Foundation, or is he like
Yeah, that's his foundation. Yeah.
I had no idea. That's wild. Okay.
Yeah, it's really cool. They have a place in Utah called the Stronghold. And it's a big ranch. This guy named Mike Serpian kind of donated the ranch to him to use, and he built this awesome log cabin up there. And what they do is they just bring veterans in there and they just give them that like camaraderie feeling of like, hey, like there's a community here for you.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
that's the most important part, right? Is creating community for these guys and give them, like we said, sense of purpose, and that's just the most important thing you can do, I think. But I want to talk about this ship that was named after your brother, because that's just like, you want to talk about leaving a legacy?
Yeah.
Because this is usually like that's the first time I just read the article today, because they sent the article, I didn't know, and they sent the article over, and I was like, well, it's crazy because usually this is for like presidents and stuff. They usually name them after presidents or generals and stuff like that. And
This just happened on Friday. And yeah, I mean it's huge. We learned I was actually at the Army Navy football game, and the Secretary of the Navy's Chief of Staff, this is the first time I've told this story publicly, but the Secretary of the Navy's Chief of Staff showed up at our tailgate. We throw the largest tailgate at Army Navy every year. It's awesome. If you're listening, and you go to the game, make sure you join us. But he came up to me and he said, the secretary would love to see you. And so I kind of said, oh, that's great. Here's where I'm going to be sitting. And he said, well, I'd like to take you to him. And I said, well, I'm going to be with a lot of my donors, and, I want to make sure I'm spending time with them. And he said, it's very important that you see the Secretary of the Navy today, along with your dad and your daughter, who, again, my daughter's a plebe at the Naval Academy. So, I said, well, my daughter's like sitting with the brigade. She's already marched on. I don't know how to get a hold of her. And he said, well, we'll have someone go get her. So I knew something was up. They grabbed us during the first quarter and they took us to a room and we walked in and it was the Secretary of the Navy, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. And they shared with us that they were naming a new Navy amphib ship, the USS Travis Manion, and we were just blown away. And then they said, "And you can't tell anyone." And we're like, "What?" They said, "We're gonna make," the Secretary of the Navy said, "We're gonna make it public January 10th at your brother's alma mater." And so we waited. We invited a bunch of people, and we invited them by saying, "Please come for a special announcement." I mean, that was literally all we could tell them. But we had over 300 people show up because
Nice.
people clearly wanted to know what this announcement was.
Yeah.
And so we invited some people to come speak. General Dunford, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, was there to speak, along with Brian Stan. Brian was one of my brother's best friends at Navy, a fellow Marine, UFC fighter, and then the Secretary of the Navy got up and announced it. And yeah, it's wild. The last Naval Academy graduate to have a ship named after them was John McCain.
Yeah.
So yeah.
He's in good
So
company.
yeah. And so it's kind of crazy. And it's a 5-year process, from now until when we commission that ship. But I say, like, for my dad to have a ship named after his son, like,
Oh,
I mean, that's it. That's the Mecca, right?
yeah.
And it was interesting because Brian Stan, when he spoke, I don't know if you know Brian or who he is. He was a UFC fighter and announcer after he left the UFC, but he was sharing, he said, Travis would not want this ship named after him, and he would not want all this recognition. And then he said, and that's exactly why it should be named after him.
Yep.
And it was like, it just rang to who Travis was. But, as incredible as it is for my family, and it's such an incredible honor, it's also an incredible honor to this post 9/11 generation,
Yeah.
because, like, as much as it is the ship in Travis's name, like, it's their ship. They own this for everything that they have gone on to do. So it's pretty awesome.
I was just reading some of the article and, it was somebody was asking why he wanted to go back. And he's like, well, if not me, then who?
Yeah.
And that's like, I think that's all you have. If you read that, just read that about him. And that kind of tells you what kind of person he was. And it's just really incredible.
I'll tell you the cool story is he said those words leaving a Philadelphia Eagles game days before he left for his second deployment. So you asked me if I was a Philly fan, like diehard, season tickets since, my dad had season tickets at the Vet when we were living in Monterey, California, because he held on to those season tickets, right?
Yeah.
And
You don't
so
let those go.
yeah, don't let him go. And so one of the things Travis had to do before he went back was go to an Eagles game. So he went to the game with my husband, and they were leaving the game, and my husband said, like, the Eagles won, spirits were super high. And when they were walking out of Lincoln Financial, my husband turned to Travis as they were about to walk down the stairs, and he said, "Hey, what if I push you down the stairs here? Maybe you'll break your ankle and you won't have to go back." And he said that Travis got real serious, and he looked at him and he said, "You know what, Dave, if I don't go back to Iraq, then somebody much less prepared is going to go in my place. If not me, then who?" And that was kind of it. Dave came home that night and he shared the story with me, and he was like, "I feel like a total jerk. Like, I literally told your brother I wanted to push him down the stairs, and that's the answer he gave me." And then after he died, my husband shared that story with a reporter at the Philadelphia Inquirer. And the front page comes out and it's a picture of Travis, and it just says, "If not me, then who?" And it became our rally cry. It was like, that's it. That is everything that we want this foundation to be about. Like, that is our motto, our ethos, our everything. And so, yeah, I would imagine that might be the ship's slogan if I could guess, as it probably should be. But Yeah.
I bet, I mean, your dad and mom must have been so proud of you too, just because, the resilience that both of you have shown, throughout your life. And then especially you with all the loss, and to still just keep your head down and keep grinding it out and keep being a good person and doing the right thing. Kudos. And I send you all the love I possibly can. And I wish you guys nothing but success, and hopefully we could stay in touch and work together in the future with 7T. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to. I really appreciate that. And I think, for me, it's about just to keep going every day, because I've been around so many men and women who have given their last breath for the freedoms that we can sometimes take for granted. And
Mhm.
I don't ever want to live a day not understanding that sacrifice and not going out and doing everything I can to live a life, and live the lives they would want us to lead.
Yeah. You're doing a great job of honoring that, I think. So,
Thank
um,
you.
I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. And, I won't take any more of your time. So I appreciate you. Oh, let's give a shout out to you have a podcast,
I
right?
do have a podcast.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's shout that out before we go.
Yes, it's called The Resilient Life. Started it during COVID. Just recorded my 100th episode this
Oh,
morning. So
congratulations.
yeah, that was kind of cool. And yeah, and I had Bo on yesterday, which was great. We talked a lot of wrestling. Having a brother growing up as a wrestler, we had a lot to talk about. So
Yeah. I love that guy, man. He's just such a great kid, man.
yeah,
I call him
yeah.
a kid because he's 10 years younger than me, but he's just, it sounds like, I feel like you're talking to a 40-year-old man, the way
Oh my
the way
God,
he
the wisdom.
conducts
Yeah,
himself. Yeah.
yeah, it's awesome.
Well, Ryan, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening to the Wolf Untamed podcast. Be sure to check me out on Instagram, DerekWolf_95. Check out the Wolf Untamed podcast on YouTube. You can listen on all the other platforms, as well as DerekWolf.com.